Pleasant greetings, everyone. William Theo here, homegrown, and glad to bring you PTV News Now. So let's get to this breaking story that will be among tomorrow's news headlines. Talks on bumping up fares on the LRT-1 railway line are over, and the cost to take the LRT-1 is poised for a much-needed hike in the interest of upgrading commuter experience to include supplemental funding to complete construction of the line to Cavite. And as quickly as the hike upgrade was announced, pushback from consumer watchdog and cause-oriented groups followed up with messages deriding DOTR's LRT train fare hike as untimely, unconscionable, and anti-poor. Still, amidst public resistance to the fare hike, the DOTR remains firm and unswayed to recall or even reduce the numbers or amounts contained in the fare hike order. And as a last-ditch attempt to mitigate public pushback on the hike, the DOTR cited how this latest fare upgrade is below the suggested hike amount of 20 pesos and only the second since January of 2023. Meanwhile, starting tomorrow, April 2nd, the cost for a single journey ticket climbs from 45 pesos to 55 pesos, while the minimum fare is up 25% from 15 to 20 pesos. Meanwhile, a stored value card's maximum fare charge is up to 17.5% from 43 pesos to 52 pesos, while the minimum fare bumps up from 15 pesos to 16. Next to the blue states of New York and California, Texas has the greatest presence or number of Chinese Americans who call the Lone Star State home, and whose roots stretch way back are intertwined with America's. VOA's Elizabeth Lee tells us the full story.
In this library at Rice University in Houston, the stories of Asian Texans are waiting to be unboxed. The Houston Asian American Archive includes some 500 first-hand accounts of Asian immigrants and their descendants.
My father came from China.
Oral history gives you a sense of immediacy.
Unlike many of their counterparts, these Asian Americans ventured away from cities like San Francisco and even New York to settle much further south. Among the artifacts are pieces of Albert G's life.
Albert G's CACA plaque.
His daughter, Linda Wu, has kept some of her father's photos.
To the White House for a state dinner. My dad was born here in the United States. His father and mother had a laundry.
When G's father died in 1927, he went to China with his mother and siblings. But he returned to the U.S. with his godfather a few years later.
Albert found himself only around 11 years old, coming back to the United States.
G eventually ended up in Houston with the help of friends and relatives. Here he opened restaurants, which attracted Hollywood celebrities who would stay at a nearby hotel.
Bob Hope.
G also helped other new Chinese immigrants settle. As established families helped newcomers from China, the number of G's grew in Houston. Not all who shared the G name were related. Recorded in this book are some of their stories, including that of Rogine G. Calvert's father, David G. He came to the U.S. at age 17 in the late 1920s as a so-called paper son.
At that time, we had the Chinese Exclusion Act,
which banned many Chinese from immigrating to the U.S.
Paper sons and paper daughters are the name given to people who buy false papers.
They were rightfully looking for people that were breaking the law, and unfortunately my dad was one.
After being detained for almost a year at the Angel Island Immigration Station in San Francisco, California, Calvert's father was granted permission to stay. He eventually married and settled in Houston, Texas. He worked in the grocery business with the help of other G's. Chow says the first large group of Chinese immigrants arrived in Houston in the 1940s and 50s. Racial segregation was legal in Texas and southern states through a series of codes known as Jim Crow laws.
Even though Houston also was subject to Jim Crow law, the law wasn't applied the same way as the other southern states. And so there's a sense of more I guess, more equity in Houston. That's why people come, a sense of business opportunity.
Restaurateur Albert G. took part in desegregating Houston's eateries. His work in the community would eventually be immortalized years later in a web comic developed by Asia Society Texas.
Kids all across the state of Texas are reading the comic. Our Asian American students in particular said they want to see themselves represented.
Asia Society Texas also worked with the Houston Asian American Archive to develop lesson guides for teachers in the state so students can explore further the history of the Asian Americans who make up the fabric of the city. Elizabeth Lee, VOA News, Houston.
At this juncture, all eyes and ears to my colleague in PTV's Baguio City studios for what's hot and happening in the Cordilleras. Audrey?
Naimbag Arabi, agsagsagan ti Baguio City Police Office iti isa sangbay dagiti turist sa iti umadani na Semana Santa ken summer vacation. Agar 500 ti may deploy a pulis para iti offline kaagapay sa ligtas at maginhawang paglalakbay ken activation ti anti-theft teams nga agbantay kadagiti natataw a lugar. Inyunay-unay dapay ti panagsurod dagiti motorista ken turista ti bakasyon lane wenno dagiti alternatibo a ruta tapno makaliklik da iti nailat agunay ti trapiko iti sentro ti syudad. Namnamaan mo ti Department of Tourism Cordillera ti panagadu ti tourist arrival itaas summer vacation. Nagbalakad amat kontra iti accommodation scam.
Yung pagtagsa ng turista is actually a good problem. So, ang ating responsibility ngayon, of course with our private sector, is to also promote the lesser-known destinations para ma-disperse.
Andito ang inyong Baguio City Police Office to ensure yung ating peace and order and security dito sa lungsod ng Baguio. Of course, syempre, maging responsable din sana yung ating mga turista at ang ating mga residents. Para sa ganon, magiging maayos yung celebration ng Holy Week. Andito yung ating Baguio City Police Office na inyong kaagapay sa ligtas at maginhawang paglalakbay.
Iti sabali pay adamag na kompleton ti munisipyo ti Tadian ti talunga infrastructure projects iti sidong ti FY 2024 Local Government Support Fund, Support to Barangay Development Program. Dagito yung proyekto ket pakairamanan ti panakapasaya ti Farm to Market Road iti Barangay Duagan, Batayan ken Lubon nga adan panggap amang pasaya ti panakagunod kadagiti nasken a serbisyo ken suportaran dagiti lokal a mannalon. Mangipakpakita dayto iti dedikasyon ken panagkomite lokal a gobyerno para iti panagduraas dagiti umili ti Tadian. Kabayatan na nakipasad dagiti Benguet Youth Leaders kadwa ni Miss Universe 2018 Catriona Gray iti babae sa Lente apasad ti Women's Month culminating event no sa dino intampok dati kinaandor dagiti babae iti Benguet iti kabailanda nga ag multitask bayat ti panang balanse da kadagiti responsibilidad da iti pagtangan ken komunidad. Naitampok madlaang ti photo gallery iti nasaunga aktibidad ang magipakpakita kadagiti kultural atawi dagiti babae ken no kasano nga impluwensyahan dagiti tradisyon. Dagiti damdamag manipud iti PTV Cordillera siak ni Audrey Villena na Imbag Arabi.